All right, welcome back to the Rebuild the Construction Mindset podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Kelley Huss, and we have Jenna Hamilton on the other side of the hosts side thing. That worked. That was an intro. We're keeping it. So we drop episodes every other Monday. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on LinkedIn or Instagram at Rebuild the Construction Mindset. Share the posts that we have, share them with friends. We have stickers, so if you would like a sticker, please reach out to us. So I'll hand it over to Jenna to introduce who we're talking to today.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelley. So today we are talking with Beth Fulster. She is probably one of the most, I've been super excited about this podcast because I've been wanting to interview her for a long time. I'm a huge fan of hers since school because we were in school together. She's always been kind of a trailblazer kind of a girl. She's always been kind of a leadership positions in school, and she's taken everything and ran with it. So Beth, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us kind of how you got into construction and where your passion lies.
Yeah, appreciate that intro, Jenna. So Beth Fulster, I'm a project superintendent for a large general contractor in the Denver metro area. Been with them about 5 years now. Been in construction about 6 years. I actually started since I was a little kid, wanted to be an architect. So pursued that, did the Lego building, but I was also doing the drawings and eventually the modeling on the computer. So I always thought that was kind of my dream there. So went to architecture school at CU Denver. And kind of where I made the switch was I did a study abroad during the winter break right before I was about to graduate. We went to Nicaragua and actually built a kind of like a maternity clinic. It's not, the maternity clinics we see here in the US, but definitely something to help out the community down there. And then the other half was a preschool. So during the semester, we designed it, fundraised, did all that kind of design owner side. And then during winter break, went down there and actually built it, got the materials. And when I was on site and we were hand tying rebar, we were mixing concrete with shovels, and I just kind of fell in love with the field side there, and kind of thought, oh crap, I don't think I want to be an architect anymore, and I'm about to graduate in, one more semester. So obviously finished my degree there, and then I had a friend who I was going to school with also. She was going the design and architecture side, and so they were working with a general contractor where she was doing her internship, and luckily they reached out for me and found an internship at a pretty small GC that does just tenant finish in the Denver metro area. So interned there right after graduation, ended up staying full time for about a year, and deferred my master's acceptance for architecture. I'm like, yep, I love construction. This is not what I want to do. So I've always wanted a master's degree. So I actually applied to CSU for master's in construction management, where I met Jenna. Loved it there. I mean, just such a great community. Go Rams. That was kind of my favorite thing to do there. So through there, I got an internship, and I've been with that company ever since. And plan to stay in construction the rest of my career.
Awesome. Good intro.
Yeah. So first, we got some connections. First, Legos.
Legos. Oh yeah, Legos, Lincoln Logs, all of it.
Built all those Legos like in front of the fireplace, and had my little house, and then like my cat would come through, and like the cat was Godzilla.
There you go.
Or the cat would just lay in my little Lego city. I also wanted to start as an architect also, but I didn't get as far as you. I figured I found construction management like senior year of high school, so I found that a little earlier than you did. Dang, but good on you.
I would have too, but some days I'm like, I don't really need this much schooling for construction, but my master's degree helped so much in so many different areas personally, and CSU has always been like my dream school, so it worked out for what the opportunity was.
So I'm going back to Lego. Sorry, now I'm on that.
No, go for it.
Favorite Lego set? Go.
Oh gosh. I don't know if I can.
Oh no.
I had a little Barbie Jeep and I found a little trailer from Goodwill one day, and I remember hooking that up to my Barbie Jeep. Barbies were driving the Legos around in my little site.
Oh, that's so cool. I like that.
Yeah, so I should have known then, but didn't.
Nice.
I love
your favorite Lego set?
Oh,
I don't know if I can name one.
oh my God. If we go, since we have a lot of Legos currently down in our basement, because we still build to this day.
There you go.
So I build currently like the expert level like city build ones, or like multi-levels, like that take like 8 hours. I would say favorite, the one that like is always in my brain, and I just remember it as a kid, was like the big pirate ship. And I had that.
Yeah.
The big, huge pirate ship. And I rebuilt it at least 2 times as a kid. So I feel like we're going to go with that one. It's stuck in my brain.
Coming to your house.
You're not allowed to play with them. You can't touch them.
Have you seen the Harry Potter ones where it's like you can build the entire like all of Hogwarts? I'm like,
they're crazy. I wish I had the money to buy those sets. Like
they're so expensive.
So expensive, but so cool. Like I wish I had the space too.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You make the space. That's what we have done. And I buy like 1 Lego set a year because they're like so expensive. So yes, they are. Anyways, off the Legos. I just had to go there for a second.
No, please do. Love them.
So Beth, I know you just said that you knew that you wanted to be in the field since before you even like went to CSU for construction management. So you knew that you wanted to be a superintendent from the get-go, right?
Yeah. When I was at the smaller GC, I was kind of more of the project engineer, assistant PM side for a little bit. Still enjoyed it because we were running a lot of jobs at once. So I was still able to get out onto the field of, multiple jobs. But every time I went out there and I was talking to the superintendent, I was like, this is so cool to like see it happening instead of, going through the submittals or things like that. Cause of course they're off site, right? In the smaller GC, you're not physically on site every day. So I had an idea about that, but I honestly didn't really know the different sides of construction. That like there truly is like a superintendent path, PM path. Obviously it can be different at every company. But really what like kind of set it for me was I had a female superintendent for my internship. And I was like, oh, she's a badass. Like if she can do this, I could probably do this. And so she was a mentor from day one and is still a great friend and mentor today. I get to call her all the time for different things, and just seeing her succeed and have such a successful career so far is, it's kind of nice to see that, especially being a female superintendent. It's still not quite a thing. Like it's very rare to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and not only that, but I mean, you're very young. You're not only a female, but you're a young superintendent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get the combination. Yeah. With the combination between the two. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, I feel like people probably respect you so much more because of it, right? There's a lot of respect that happens in the field. I feel like that more so than in the office.
For sure. Yeah. I think they're both thankless jobs at times. We're in a thankless industry sometimes, especially on those harder projects. But when you're working crazy hours and things like that, people eventually notice that and they see it and realize if you're not there, the job's not getting built. And so I think when you're with a good company, good project, like that's truly noticed. But the key to that too is noticing the whole team, right? It's not just me. I need the office side too to support me. I've always heard everyone's job is to support the superintendent. And I used to feel guilty about that because I'm like, well, they have like their stuff to do too. Like it's not just my job. But it's true at the end of the day, if I don't have materials or contracts or different things to be able to coordinate all that, I mean, it isn't getting built. So
yeah. So do you find like, just in your experience, do you see advantages of being a woman as a superintendent? I mean, are there things that you're like, yes, like, you feel like you get away with a little more, I guess?
Yeah. I've been asked this a lot and I still don't think I have an answer for it. I honestly would say no. I don't think there is an advantage at all. I think you guys have mentioned this on other podcasts, like you have to work twice as hard. It doesn't matter what project, what position you are. Being a female in construction, that's just what it is still today. And in my opinion is you have to work twice as hard, but you also have to then prove that you can at least meet the level of everyone else, let alone, you know, still working harder. Especially being in the field. And like you said, being young, for me to get up there in front of a room full of men and say, this is what we're doing, like this is the schedule, like I still want their input and things like that, but to be able to direct that work, you don't get the feedback all the time, or you don't see it happening, and then to have to go have the conversation with them. And I mean, there's still times today where I have to depend on my upper management men to call and be like, hey, they're not even getting back to me, or, you know, I'm calling, I'm emailing, you know, sending delay notices, whatever it could be, and I'm still not getting anything, but they call them and there's an answer. So I think that's the hardest piece I'm currently dealing with. And I think, unfortunately, that's always going to be the case, especially if you don't have a relationship with those trades that are on your project or have worked with that PM before, things like that. So I don't know if it's necessarily an advantage. Like, I think there's pieces of being a female, like we're typically more organized and can create those relationships. So I think that helps, but I don't know if I would necessarily say it's an advantage. I think we need it to be able to make it to that next point.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think something that I've heard actually in the past is actually today I heard it from one of my higher ups, that women are just more emotionally intelligent in some regard, right? So we can like notice if someone has a bad day, or you know, we have more of that like awareness, right?
Absolutely.
And we care more.
Yep,
In that
absolutely.
regard too, and it could be the nurturing side of us or whatever it is. So that I feel like that could be kind of an advantage without really realizing it, because you're able to build those relationships. Whereas like if you approach someone the same, like if a man approached someone the same way, it would almost be like weird. Like, why are you,
for
why
sure.
are you being touchy-feely?
It's
Yeah. So like, yeah, but that's cool. I mean, I think that perspective is really good, and I would agree with that. I think, you know, women do need to work more and improve ourselves, but at the same time, it kind of gives us that leg up because we are working so much harder, so we're kind of running ahead of the crowd.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I like that piece of it, but sometimes it's like, oh crap, I'm getting close to burnout, or like I need some help here. And I feel like we don't always ask for help either, because it's immediately like, oh, they don't know what they're doing, they can't manage their work, and it's not really a positive thing. But if somebody else, like a man, says, hey, I can't necessarily do this, can you come help me? It's, yeah, sure, no problem. But if I were to ask for help, especially in the field with other trade partners, sometimes it's well, you're the GC, you should be able to manage it, right? And it's like, yes, I can, but like I could use your support and help and expertise, right? No matter what's going on.
Yeah.
I was just at a high school before this, and I was doing just a presentation on construction and my career in general to a group of girls, and I brought that up of, you know, saying I don't know what to do or I need help.
Yes.
That as when I started in the industry, I wanted to prove that I was the best. And that not even starting just starting in college, it was like that. I had to be the best girl in the construction management department, not just the best, right? And that then definitely came over into the workforce, and it took a while for me to say, hey, I need help. And there was a few people, I would say a few guys, that I would be more comfortable with in saying like, hey, I need that. There was definitely someone still to this day. We've talked about him. We talked about him actually in the last episode quickly, but there's people like that. But it's still something that I still falter with, but I very much push it. And I was telling the girls in high school, and they were even calling it's something you don't even do in school. They admitted that that's not something you do in high school. So it's very ingrained in some of us I don't want to admit that I'm wrong at an early age, and that just compounds as we get older. And to then have to be in an environment where you potentially can be talked to negatively or then perceived, this is your reputation that you're building. You are building a reputation. You want these trade partners, you want all these people to continue working with you, you want to build a good project, you want to make some money, get it done. But it can be very scary to say, I need help, and that's really hard.
Yeah, especially kind of just being the leadership side of a project. And wait, you don't know this? Like, you should know this. And so that is constantly going through my head. Especially if I don't have that relationship yet and it's the beginning of a project, like, oh my gosh, how does our project super not know this? But I do think the industry is getting better at understanding, hey, when I'm asking for help or your expertise, I'm trying to help you. I'm not just, I truly don't know anything. I know this side of things, but I don't quite know that. And I'm really asking you, what do you need? Because I'm not going to know it unless you communicate that. So I think it all goes back to that communication side that I think the world in general struggles with, but especially in construction, it's just yell and get it done kind of thing, right?
Right. And you can't really yell as a woman as much because then you're just looked at as being a bitch. Not
yeah, exactly. No, as soon as you like put your foot down, it's like, oh God, she's a bitch. And I'm like, no, I'm really not, but okay.
Yeah.
We talked about that and last week during WIC week, we had a couple panels and it was like, you're either too emotional or you're being too bossy. And it's like, there's not like this middle ground sometimes. And right. I know I've had that where it's like, I was told you're being a bitch, but in a good way. But then when I was being a bitch in a bad way, it was like not good. And I'm like, well, which way is acceptable? I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely a struggle, especially in the field of it's like trying to be aware of their feelings too, but also like, dude, I also have to get this job done. Like, there's contracts. Can we just figure this out together and move on?
Right, exactly. So when you're saying at the beginning of the project, you're, don't feel comfortable because you don't have the relationships yet, like what are some ways that you build relationships?
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, just kind of having that emotional side of it of, there at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all here to make money and, support our family, support our wants and desires. And so, especially if I know they have kids or something, you eventually find out, oh yeah, Johnny has soccer game every Saturday and he's killing it, or he's goalie or whatever it could possibly be. And I'm kind of that weird person who remembers like small details and people are like, how do you know that? And so that's kind of what I use a lot of, hey, how was that birthday party 2 weeks ago for some 2-year-old neighbor, like things like that. And then they realize you care about them, I think, and start to be like, like, how do you know that? Like, and like you said, asking if they're okay, you can tell when someone is not okay. Even if you don't know them that well, you can just tell how they're acting. I mean, at Stretch and Flex in the morning, are they into it? Are they just kind of like kicking around their feet? And just even starting to have that conversation of like, hey, how's your day going? What's a challenge for you today? How can I help you? Kind of those quick questions of how to get to know somebody and show them that you are not here to yell at them and you're not doing it right. And I'm trying to tell you how to do it. Because at the end of the day, I mean, they're the experts and I'm just here to help get the job done.
Yeah, I really like that answer. I mean, I think in Ty's episode, we talked about that a little bit too. And I mean, he always like mentioned, when we were talking about toxic relationships and toxic job sites, and every project is going to have its downfalls, right? Like that's just construction. And I think just the relationships you build and the friendships you build, and I mean, it goes a long way. The industry is so small. The likelihood of you working with the same people over and over and over again is very, very, very high, especially if you're in the industry and work for the same company for over 30 years. So, just making the effort to do that and to not make a name for yourself, like certain superintendents, little contractors that I have worked with in the past that everyone I talk to, I don't even have to say their name. I just have to describe what they do. And
absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's so and so. And I'm like, yeah. So,
that's always been like one of my biggest fears is walking across a job site. Cause they always talked about like safety cop. And I feel like that's starting to change as well. But my fear is always like walking into a room and everyone like not wanting to talk to me, being upset about something. And instead of coming to me with either a safety issue or I have this huge constraint or, hey, my material didn't show up or I have this in the way, like, come tell me those issues. That's my job to remove that stuff instead of keeping it quiet. And then we have a meeting a week later and it's like, well, shit, now we're 2 weeks behind schedule because you didn't say anything. So I always worry about that and I'm a people pleaser. I don't want people to like hate me, but at the end of the day, like we're here for work, but also let me help you. Like truly let me help you. And so sometimes you have to prove that even being a female, I feel like we tend to be more helpful people. But showing like, hey, I'm actually going to get it done. Like if you need this done, I'm going to actually do it instead of like, yep, okay, and then never doing it. That's the follow through part is huge too in creating that relationship with trades.
Yeah.
I was going to ask when you're just talking about trades bringing up issues.
Yeah.
Because we know that's a big thing. I mean, I was on my side, when I was on the trade side, I'd bring up issues and I'd get, some people would love it, some people would hate it. It's like, stop telling me everything. So you get both negative and positive in general.
For sure.
Why do you think, from your experience, some trades don't want to bring up the issues? Why do you, is there the PTSD of previous people, previous jobs? Or if you've talked to people, what do you think?
I think that's definitely part of it. Like Jenna, you were saying it, certain superintendents, that's just what they have. That's their persona, which is unfortunate, but they're worried about being wrong, not ordering the right material, because what do GCs typically do? We're calling the PMs, the ops managers saying, hey, what the hell? Your material's not here. Like, this submittal is approved. Your contract says this. Like, I think that's the general perception of GCs. And yes, that can be the case. But most of the time, the people in the trades are coming up because their office is not getting back to them. They are not ordering the material, or, they just didn't understand something, and trying to be that advocate of, do you need me to call the PM and ask where the material is, right? Or is it, you don't have enough manpower? Like, what is the true issue? Because I think they're scared that we're going to call the office and they're going to get written up, or, God forbid, be fired, or something along those lines, where they're going to be the one who it's their fault. And then it's also like, but you need to get this done. You need to get this done. You need to get this done. So I think that's typically what I hear the most, because there's some times where I've said, do you need me to call your office? And they're like, no, please don't, please don't. I'm like, I will not say anything about you. Like, I will call just saying, hey, I've noticed so-and-so's material's not here. Like, what's the update? And they're so grateful after that, because then the PM's not calling them being like, what the hell, why'd you tell them? It's the PM's dealing with the issue. And then what do you know, the material shows up whenever it's supposed to. So I think that's typically the feedback I get from people in the field of, I'm going to be responsible for, it's going to be my fault. And it's like, no, I'm just here to help you.
Yeah. I could speak, I mean, obviously very personal, on a personal level here, because I am a PM for a trade. And I can tell you right now that, that is my biggest fear, is my field guys, my superintendents getting the brunt of an issue, right? So I try to, as the PM, I always copy the superintendent, general contractor superintendent, on everything. They are on every email, whether it's change orders, whatever. I want them to know. I want them to be aware of what's happening.
I love that stuff.
Yeah,
I want to just know everything.
Exactly. And then I also, like, if something's delayed or something's whatever, I'm not afraid to have those tough conversations, because
Absolutely.
I agree with you. Like, I think, if we tell a general contractor a date, that date is in their head, right? That is the date that we're getting the material.
Absolutely.
No day before, no day after, right?
Yep.
But a lot of the times with like a lot of procurement and stuff, we're kind of like estimating, right? We're like, oh, the lead time is 12 weeks from now or whatever, or from when we release. And there's always things that come up, and, especially with like the pandemic and like, stuff getting delayed and da-da-da-da. But like, if we're not upfront and saying, hey, FYI, this is going to be late 2 weeks or whatever, you guys can't plan. You can't plan around
That's
that.
what I was going to say is,
there's no
I'm
plan.
going to be sitting there thinking you have the material and it's going to be showing up, and I could have had, I don't know, painters in that room.
Exactly.
Like, I could have changed the sequence there, and now it's like too late. I don't have the manpower or whatever it is.
Exactly. Agreed.
Because if you ask anyone about construction who works in construction, they always say it never goes as planned. Mm-hmm. So why don't we communicate when it doesn't go as planned? Like, why aren't we doing that?
That is our job, is to pivot, right? Like, to pivot and try to figure everything out. And I over communicate. Sometimes I think the emails I send, I feel like they're like, okay, I don't need to know all of that stuff. But
Jenna, can you be the PM on my next job? That'd be great.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think it's, it goes back to the fact that I want my field guys to also feel comfortable, right? Like, I don't want them to be at the brunt of it. And whenever they call me and they're like, hey, the superintendent's yelling at me for X, Y, and Z, the first thing I do is I call that superintendent. I don't call the PM. I don't call their office. I call the superintendent and I explain the situation. And I always seem to like calm it down, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a cool perspective, though, to kind of hear your side of that.
Yeah. I think I've always, even my engineers and whoever's on my team, CC me on everything. I really don't care how many emails I get, because I'll know right away if I have to do something about it. Like if you're just saying, hey, this is, 12 to 15 weeks. Okay, now I at least have an idea.
Yep.
Or, hey, now it's going to be 20 weeks. Okay, fine. Like, let me take a look at the schedule, sequencing, like, let's see where we're at. Or, even this submittal got submitted. Great. I'm going to look out for when it's approved so I can also take a look in the field. Like, put me on everything. And if I don't have to do anything, I just file it away. But I've seen it and, it's in my head and we can move on instead of having to call and then they're searching for an email to forward it to me. Like, why aren't we just putting people on these emails?
Agreed. Well, and
what
I
about
think
go ahead. I was gonna say, what about like day-to-day issues, like roadblocks, constraints that are coming up the day-to-day? Like I've heard mixtures of people that are like, you don't need to tell me that stuff, or only if it's going to affect you, long term, or if you don't bring it up to me unless you've already like discussed it with that other trade that's the problem. It's like, I've heard of multiple different things, right? What is your take on that?
Kind of like the email thing, like, let me know. Sometimes there are those trades where you're like, okay, you're like, I've heard this 1,000 times, or they'll want to keep talking to me about other things. So you kind of have to know like when to cut off, but I like to know that they've communicated that, or, it could be the smallest thing, but they could be like, hey, by the way, I'm missing blah, 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 or this is happening. And in my head, I'm thinking of all the trades. So I'm going to be like, well, shit, now Jenna's going to be screwed in a week. And so it's like, I need to get that figured out now, even though it seemed like a small thing to Kelley, it's going to be a huge thing for Jenna. So I'm all for like, on my job, they have daily constraint meetings and we go through them for 15 minutes, just yell anything. I don't even care if it's trash cans in your way. Like, tell me everything, we can figure it out, get it solved. And then we're also not wasting manpower on things that aren't important, or just keeping that sequence. I mean, that is so key to being on schedule and budget. So I'm all for the littlest things. And then they aren't questioning, is this too small of an issue to tell Beth? Is this not that big of a deal? And then they might not think it's a big deal, but I'm like, holy shit, why didn't you tell me yesterday? And it kind of helps with that being scared to bring up stuff of, even if I'm like, okay, cool, I got it covered. Like, thanks for letting me know. And you just walk away. It's also a good check-in point to create that relationship as well.
I got this last week, and I never looked at it this way. Had my boss actually say this to me. The more constraints on a job that are being tracked, the higher level of trust for that team.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
And I never looked at it that way until last week. So, I mean, it's something I always like. The more it's just like there's a bunch of stuff wrong. It's like, yeah, but you're being told everything. Like you're being told more things. So that means people trust you and feel comfortable with you saying the littlest thing, like you're talking about, Beth. So
absolutely.
I thought that was like, to me, I'm like, that makes perfect sense. But I never thought about it before until like last week when she said it to me.
Yeah, no, I had my last job, a project super. I was trying to get this like constraint thing going because I saw how important it was on other jobs. And I'm like, if we're going to make this schedule, like we need to know everything. And people would, say stuff like, there's a box of spray paint in my way or in this room. And some trades, I mean, they just don't want stuff in the room. And I don't blame them. Safety reasons, like they can't work as fast, productivity. And like even a trash can, like, hey, I don't have enough trash cans over here to throw away my trash. I'm wasting time going across the floor plate. And I was like, bring them on, guys, like bring up the constraints. And the project super's like, that's not a constraint. I'm like, well, it is for them. Like, and what do you know, like they eventually kind of started working with each other, like the foreman, and coordinating things. And so that takes off time and work off your plate to really focus on those bigger constraints and pre-planning and trying to get ahead of things, because no one likes fighting fires, let's be honest.
Well, what you're doing with those constraint meetings is you're creating ownership, right? Like,
absolutely.
Because if they're all in it together and they're all talking to each other, then that's, again, like you're saying, taking stuff off your plate. And then now, when Ricky, the mechanical foreman, and Bobby, the plumber or whatever, you know what I mean? They're talking to each other about this stuff now, and they're not going through you because they don't know each other. I mean, I think, there's some contractors that hate when the subs talk to each other. You know what I mean? Like they have this weird thing where they do not want subs to talk to each other. I totally get it when it comes to like, like we're not going to be making big decisions together and whatever, right? Like that's different. And obviously the contractor will always be in the know, but letting them kind of take ownership of their scope of work in working together and figuring it out and, creating those relationships with each other, it just makes it go smoother. It's better for you. It's better for the whole job site. I mean, it's, and not only that, but like it kind of creates less paperwork, because there are times like,
absolutely.
I will be completely honest. Like there's times where if there's a subcontractor that we're working with, let's say it's a drywaller, and they've worked with us, they didn't back charge us for having to open the wall for a bracket or whatever, right?
Sure.
Like, I'm going to scratch their back later.
And one bracket. Absolutely. Don't open the wall 90 damn times. Because otherwise I'm back charging you, Jenna.
I'm saying
one bracket, Jenna.
Jenna, how many conversations do we have about this bracket?
Yeah, exactly. But it's creating that like trust and like less paperwork for you guys. There's not money.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So it's,
and with the bracket idea, I mean, it touches everything on a project, like from quality, because now, millwork and plumbing might be talking about something that I missed, or, hey, I noticed this is a little bit off. Like, do you want to check this before I close up the wall? And just having those conversations with them, if they needed a tool, or like, hey, can you, help move this? Like, it's just so easy. And you can tell the culture, like just the friendliness of trade. So you have to prove that to them at first. Like, hey, Ricky is not going to screw you over here, Bob. Like, they're like, let's help each other, and your work gets done, and then you're not held up. Like, you have to almost give them a real life example of that. Like, hey, if Ricky does this, like, here's what you're doing, and then we are good to go, guys. And they sit there for a minute because they're kind of pissed. Like, well, my work has to go in here. And it's like, oh wait, no, this does work better. And then it starts to snowball after that.
Well, and those little constraints that you're like having them bring up, if you can help them with the little constraints, they're going to bring up the bigger constraints, because now you're building that trust level. It's like, yeah, she helped us get those trash cans out of the way. Like, it may seem minute, but to that person, it may have been a big deal in building trust with you, that they may not even know that they did. Like, that's what they were doing in general. It was probably a subconscious thing. So I think that's a really big deal. The smallest thing can build that relationship to then start, you guys talking well, other trades talking well. I mean, I've heard people say, well, I know that's wrong, but I don't care because it's not my work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's not the environment we want on a job site.
Like, because wait until you're in that boat, and then you're going to become crying to me, and I'm going to know you said that. And it goes back to kindergarten, right? Like, treat people how you want to be treated. Apparently some of us still can't get that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, and it's funny because it's like, we were just talking about psychological safety in a prior podcast, and, creating the environment so people feel like they can actually speak up. So once you get people starting to talk about constraints, then you're going to have people come up and say, hey, I have an idea to make this faster. I have an idea to do this, right? And then they're having buy-in in the schedule, right? It's not just the contractors. It's not just the general contractor schedule. It's everyone's schedule. They have buy-in, and they're like, hey, I know I said that I need to do X, Y, and Z because that's what we owe or whatever, but I can go in this room and do this thing, or I can go before ceiling grid, or I can, have those conversations. And that doesn't happen if you're terrified of your superintendent.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's more like shut up and just get it done. And, just all the projects that I've been on that I've been successful do that. Like, they have that culture. And I mean, I would never want to go back any other way.
I agree. So, aside from the constraints, I really like that a lot. The constraint meeting that you have, what other kind of lean tools do you use on traditional projects or even non-traditional?
Yeah. For anyone listening, if you don't know what lean is, you should, and it's awesome. So go take a look at that.
Buy into the cult, join the cult.
Yes, please do. Please do. I could totally be a leader of it, but yeah. A big thing, again, I think it goes back to the trash can. Having trash cans on site to be able to throw away trash and keep it clean. A big thing I always do on projects is, and again, getting the trade buy-in of, I do a lot of interior work lately. So printing out the floor plans, and in one of those constraint meetings, like if we don't have many constraints, I'm going to go through how I'm planning to have your laydown area. And if someone's like, actually, no, it would work better over here, or, whatever could be possibly going on, to have that feedback. And even if I'm like, well, this stuff, it doesn't work because of this, like having that open conversation, they're going to put their stuff where I have marked because they had buy-in. They understand where it goes. It works for them. That's where they wanted it to go. Now, can I make that happen every time? No, but we can have the conversation about it. And then, I just finished a 4-story tenant finished job, about 20, I think we ended like 23 million. Had that on every floor plate. And so when you came off the elevator with your materials, you knew exactly where your laydown areas were. And then didn't have any flooring in yet. So I had spray painted those areas with each trade had a different color, same to match like in wall inspections. So if, you were, I don't even remember the colors now, but mechanical and you were orange, if you saw orange on the floor, your stuff went there. If you saw orange on the wall, you were ready for drywaller to come behind you and close up. So every possible thing that we could do for color coding, like that was their color. It was like about a 1.5-year job. That was their color the whole way. I don't
think I've ever seen that detailed from a GC side. I feel like I've definitely seen that. Like I've done that from when I was on the trade side. But from the GC side, I'm just trying to think. I mean, maybe like your logistics out on the yard, but not like on a floor plate. So that's very interesting. That's a new one for me. And I would love that because from my side, coming from the framing and drywall, like ductwork's everywhere. What am I doing?
Oh, exactly.
I would love that.
Exactly. And that was the other thing too, kind of with the lean, like with the delivery specifically and kind of 5S is, we had a delivery board where you'd go in and it would be, again, your same color on this calendar, like basically a team's calendar of what's coming, what time is it coming, like blocking out that area. Cause we had a small area where deliveries could come in, but also that's where workers were coming and going. And so, I mean, the safety aspect of that alone, do you need a forklift? Like, how is this material getting unloaded? Where is it going? Like, what are you doing with it? Because we didn't start it right away. It was probably a month in and I was like, I'm not dealing with this. And we were having deliveries all over the place because people were mobilizing and then people were waiting for the forklift and they were getting mad at the other foreman. And I'm like, no, we can't do this. So that was kind of my idea to come up with that. And kind of going back to the respecting the female superintendents, they didn't believe me when I said, if it's not on the delivery board and it's not approved to be here, I'm sending it back. And everyone's like, she's not going to do that. Like, I'm not even going to do this stupid delivery board. I have to do another thing on my computer. What do you know? An 18-wheeler showed up with lights on it. Very important lights for our schedule. And I said, sorry, it's not on the delivery board. And I sent it away and everyone's face was like, holy shit. And then at that next, like later that day, I was, finishing up and I was like, I wonder what deliveries we have for tomorrow. All of a sudden, calendar is just like packed with deliveries. And I was like,
good for you.
It worked out. I mean, it worked out so well. We always knew where our material was going. We talked about it at the foreman meetings every day. And it was never oh shit, we have all these pallets. Like, where are they going to go? Because it was an interior big space, but we didn't have a lot of laydown area because we were moving quick. And like Kelley was saying with HVAC, like a bunch of duct work, it was all new, framing, drywall, like you have load weights. Like there's just so much that goes into deliveries I don't think people think about all the time. And it's not just because we don't want you to bring your stuff and keep going. It's actually going to stop you from working because now I have to call the drywaller, have him come from the 2nd floor to the 4th floor to move stuff for, Ricky to install. So always recommend that 5S'ing. Like personally, I do it at my house. I do label some stuff. I'm going to be that nerd. Label stuff.
Is your desk labeled? Is your desk labeled with like, here's where my computer goes? No,
it's not that bad. I have thought about it, Kelley, but I was like, if I have people walk into my apartment like that, I can't do that.
Can't be that person.
You'd be like, going back crazy.
Exactly.
Going back real quick to the color coding. So I've actually suggested this as the trade partner to a general contractor that I have to say is the least lean contractor I've ever worked with. And they don't listen to the podcast because they're really not lean. So I'm not really worried about saying anything.
Damn.
Let it out, Jenna.
That being said, I suggested this color coding to them. Yeah. And I said, have you guys tried this? Because what was happening was they were putting drywall on the walls and they were covering plumbing. The sinks were supposed to go. They were covering, we didn't have backing in the walls. Like,
that's the worst. That's the worst.
Yes. And we don't know until we go to install, right? Anything. And then all of a sudden there's a backing. So
and there's finished product all around.
Yep, exactly. And they're ripping open walls because we're not going to hang on studs because a lot of other reasons other than the fact that it's a seismic project, but that's a whole different you know. But anyway, like, so I suggested this to them and they said, we tried, it didn't work. So like, what are some ways that you've made it work? Because you've obviously made it work. So what do you do? Like, how do you get the buy-in from your trade partners and all of that?
Absolutely, probably one of the most challenging things I do in my job is getting the buy-in, especially on the lean side. And they don't even have to be, you know, kind of the older generation in construction. It can be, you know, a foreman who's only been in it as long as I have, and they just don't get it. They think it's, you know, additional work and they don't have time for it. And I always say, I don't either, but this will actually save you time. And so it's really like taking the time and maybe even taking one trade at a time to, at least from the general contractor side of, hey, I want you to try out this system that I have and see how it works. Like, let me know. And they're going to succeed. They're going to be making money on schedule. And so then for the like mechanical contractor to be like, oh, the electricians are like hauling ass in these rooms. Like now they're on my ass. And that becomes a stress piece. And then they start coming to me of, I can't keep up. Well, like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, look what they're doing. So sometimes that's helpful of using a trade as an example, especially if it's someone we've worked with and they know our requirements. Also, like, frankly, being in the contract, like, I hate to pull out that contract sometimes, but you have to at points. Like, you have no other choice, especially if you try to have a conversation, you have that relationship and it's just not happening. We, at the company I work for, we have, you know, lean in our contract of certain things, like things need to be on wheels. And sometimes you gotta do that to get them on board. I'd say those are kind of the two things. Obviously depends on what kind of project and the foreman, because if they are not willing to lead or set those kind of examples for their crew, it's not going to happen. Because sometimes you'll see people on the crew who like it, but the foreman's like, no, we're not doing this. Like, just leave the trash there, or we're just bringing in material or whatever. And so it's a huge challenge, but I would say those are kind of the best like ideas there, if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think the contract, because and just from speaking from the trade perspective, if it's not in the contract, some of these lean tools, and this I'm talking like for a trade partner who doesn't believe in,
absolutely.
I totally believe in lean and I love lean. But like coming perspective wise, if you don't understand lean principles and you don't understand
absolutely
that, you're going to look at that and say, that's going to be more expensive for me. That's going to take more time. That's going to be, I don't have that in my budget. So then, you know, they're coming back and saying, well, I don't owe that to you. Well, I don't owe putting stuff on wheels. I don't owe having to go through and check to make sure and, you know, and mark off with a color, you know, a spray paint color saying that I finished this room, right? Like, because it's extra work for them, even though at the end of the day it's not. And
I'd say with that too, like the spray paint pieces, I had that complaint too. Well, I can't get spray. Like, that's not in my material delivery or material order. I said, okay, no problem. Next day, like, I had every single spray paint color. Like, we purchased it to say like how important this is for the job site. And so I think sometimes that, like, supporting as a GC, and also like another thing I was thinking about is like pre-install meetings, like when we're getting ready to mobilize, and really saying, like, especially if you're coming in, you know, halfway through the job, like having them come out onto site and walk it and see, like, you can tell the culture, you can tell it's clean, like you feel that emotionally when you come onto a job site, or at least you should, I think. Is it always perfect? No, but to strive for that perfection is, it's just so helpful for everyone. Like, everyone succeeds.
I've worked with your company before, and I can vouch for that. You guys do a very good job making it very clean job site.
I hope most of our job sites are with that, you know, because there's just always times where it's, oh shit, we got to get it done. But you have to make sure you kind of go back to the basics and really be like, okay, what do we need to do to be successful? Because if you just throw your hands up in the air and start having trash everywhere, you're going to have safety incidents. You're going to have people yelling, and no one's going to want to help anyone. And so it can go downhill very quick.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of kind of that time and money, it doesn't seem worth it. But when you run that whole job like that, you're going to make so much more money. There's so many studies out there of it's just all around better to do like lean stuff, and
for everyone.
Yeah.
I was say there's studies, but it's always good to do them like, all right, let's do it on this job site. Let's study it. Because that's usually where the tangibleness is like, that's great. That worked on that job, but how does it work on this job? It's like, all right, let's do it.
And that's what I get a lot from trades. Yeah, I get that a lot from trades. Well, this one doesn't have as much lay down area, or the schedule's tighter, and it's like, yeah, I get that, but like let's set this thing up. Like it's going to be worth the time. And just like the cleaning aspect and the 5Sing, like there'd be certain Fridays where I'm like, we're stopping work after lunch and like we're done at 1, and we're going to spend the rest of the day like organizing, getting ready for Monday. So it's a, right into work on Monday. And some people are like, well, schedule, Beth, like, what are you doing? It's like, we're fine. Like, this is way more important. And so showing them that, like, I'm willing to give up this time in the schedule to make them be successful next week is kind of, again, that trust building. And hey, this is important because it makes a difference. Like, if it really didn't make a difference, hell no, I would not put my time and effort into it.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say the way you presented that, like, how do you present that? Because I know a lot of trades are gonna be, I mean, even for me, it's like, oh great, now you want us to clean up. I don't want to freaking clean up. So it's like, how do you present that to give that off? That's like, hey, I'm doing this because of this reason. Do you give the why behind it beyond just we need a clean job site? Because I know that's what I've experienced.
Yeah, so usually like that Friday morning at Stretch and Flex when we're going through stuff, I'll make a comment of that, like, hey, this is why either the owner's showing up and I need to make sure this is like safe to walk through, because when work's happening, sometimes the areas aren't safe, but hey, they're coming Friday afternoon, like most of you are leaving early, like Friday's just a good day for that. So kind of talk about the why during our morning huddles. Honestly, the biggest key that I've come to find so far, and I think I'm still trying to figure out how to communicate it, Kelley, but is for me to get out there and have a broom and have a trash can and be with them cleaning, showing that, hey, I also have stuff to do, and I'm not higher than you or like any more important. I'm also here keeping my job site clean. And so I don't know if maybe that's part of the woman advantage of, holy shit, she's cleaning. Like, we better do something.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they'll stop me. They'll be like, Beth, you don't need to, like, we got it. I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, I'm willing to help you guys. And so I think that's the key too, is like being out there with them and, hey, this is important to me personally, but also because I want you guys to be successful. It's not just for me. Like, you guys are out here doing the work and, having to walk over material or having to constantly move stuff around. Like, I would be pissed if I was installing,
I have a funny story actually similar to that. I was on a project where this superintendent, he was really cool actually. Like, we got along really well, but he just had a really bad day. And it was like a Friday and my guys were off for, I think we recognized a holiday that they didn't or something. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, my guys are taking this day off. Like, they've been working so much. I mean, they're ahead of schedule, all this stuff. So they were not working that day. And I get an angry call that we had. I don't even remember what it was. I want to say it was like we had some material in some of these rooms that like the flooring guy was bitching about, and he wasn't even supposed to be in those rooms yet, and he was ahead of schedule, so he was put, you know what I mean, like
of
that
course,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he calls me and he's angry. Where are your guys? And I'm like, dude, I told you like multiple times that they're not going to be here today. And he just was like so upset, right? And he's like, well, they need to be here. That you need to get someone here. So it was me and my female PE. We went out to the job site and we took our gloves and we started moving the stuff.
I love it. Yes.
And one of the trades walks in and he goes, "What are you guys doing? Like, what?" We're like, "We're told that the stuff needed to move, so we're moving it." And the superintendent was like, "Okay, I'll get some of my carpenters to help move." But I'm like, "Okay."
Yes. No, totally. I think it gives that like pause moment of like, is this really that important? Like, is this really that big of a deal?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny how as soon as someone who's like kind of not supposed to be helping or who usually does, it's like, oh wait, is this supposed to happen? Like, am I doing something wrong? It's like you said, they start questioning themselves, and so sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah, it is for sure. I would agree with that. So I know I'm gonna go into this because I know I've used it with you guys before, and you guys you guys do this really well. Trade damage. How do you like manage that? I mean, is that something that you guys have a lean tool for?
I don't know. Maybe it's considered like a lean tool, but again, kind of all this stuff goes back to the relationships, the right culture on the job site, and having that relationship with each foreman. Some jobs we've had literally trade damage meetings, and PM and super show up, and sometimes it's kind of interesting because I could be like, hey Jenna, you're charging me for this hole in the wall, but then someone else did this, and like literally have them look at each other like, Jenna, what are you going to charge, I don't know, James? And they're going to be like, oh shit, like, because behind the screen it's like it's fine, and it's it doesn't matter. And again, it saves that paperwork. But like when you look at James and you're like, oh, I'm going to charge you $500 because you kind of screwed this over. But then I'm realizing they know that one of my guys did this. And so no one's going to argue that. Like no one's going to sit there and be like, well, Jenna, like I need that $500. Or it's going to be like, okay, yeah, let's just move on. Like not that big of an issue.
Yeah. Call it wash. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it comes to like the bigger things. Like my last job, we had a lot of issues with the elevator breaking. Because people were like holding the doors open. And I mean, that costs thousands of dollars to fix. And so, it came to a point where we set up a system. So I guess like that piece of lean of you get the key from us, you check it out, like you tell us, and again, delivery, like needs to be on delivery board. We know you need the elevator. And if the elevator is broken within that time frame, like you're responsible for that elevator. Because then what we had to do is, charge all the trades for it, because no one was confessing. And it comes back to the like, can I tell Beth like we did this? And most of the time people are okay saying they damaged something or broke something because we can figure it out. And most of the time it's going to be like, that's fine, like we got it. Or like you were saying, if someone did something prior, you kind of have that in your back pocket of, yeah, we're actually good, like don't worry about it. So I think it depends on the culture for sure. Sometimes starting that meeting is good, and then it eventually just kind of like goes by the wayside because people are starting to communicate in the field, or it's like, oh, I'll just deal directly with Jenna, or like you said, we work with them a lot. I think that's important to have at the beginning of the job, but I think you can eventually kind of get away from that. And when it's like big damage, who did it, like, and then it's just more of having that conversation, like, listen, I gotta charge you for this, like we can't, I have a piece of glass like shattered, like so I can't just like let that go. So I think that's kind of the ways we handle it, and seeing where a lot of the damage is. Like most of the time it's at the end with finished product and drywall, and I'm having to do all these patches, and it's it could be in the contract of, hey, we have 90 patches, that's just part of the contract, and don't even ask me, don't write me a ticket, like just do the 90 patches. Well, we keep count on Procore or something and call it a day. And then if it became more than that, I would typically know what trade it was, like, oh, here's Jenna cutting in like 6 new brackets. So that's a way that we dealt with it on another job.
That's cool. I think I had one last question I really wanted to get in. Kelley, do you have anything before I ask this question?
No.
Okay.
I'm just shooting from the hips over here.
Okay.
That's what we do, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know that this is something you're passionate about too. Mentorship programs and just mentorship in general. What are your thoughts on the importance of it, and how can other companies, if they don't already have a mentorship program, what are some things they can do to kind of start it or implement that?
Sure. Yeah. I think mentorship is one of the most important things in your career, no matter how high up you move. Just in life in general, like it doesn't even have to be career wise, having mentors in different parts of your life. For me personally, like I mentioned, having a female superintendent become my mentor is just so huge for my confidence and honestly my success so far in my career. I think it's important to have kind of the formal and informal mentors. So for her, it might have been more like a formal at first, but now it's become like an informal, because I'll talk to her about other things in life. Like, I've had other friends reach out to their mentors in their careers where they're asking how to buy a house because they're new, they don't know it. I mean, some of the stuff we're not ever really taught, or, if they didn't have a parent to teach something. So I think that's kind of the informal side that's just so important in your growth. And also for the next generation, like teaching those things and being open about like, hey, let's have these conversations of no matter what it is. And it goes back to the, like, it's okay that you don't know something. Like, it is truly okay. And then the formal side is just being able to understand, like, I kind of wish I had one right out of school. Understanding the career paths in construction, understanding what it takes, like, what does it look like? Instead of just being like, okay, moving on to the next role or job type, or we're going to just figure it out. I mean, there's still going to be part of that, even with a mentorship, because it's your journey. But it was just nice having formal mentorships at my company too, to ask, like, hey, what kind of jobs did you like? Like, what did you like about them? Or how do you deal, like, how do I read this contract? Kind of more like the technical aspects as well that we might not truly know coming out of school. Or how did you deal with this situation? Like, here's what's going on. Because there's always something no one has dealt with before, but they've dealt with something along the lines. So I think formal and informal are just so important. And just having somebody to talk to about construction, it's a hard and challenging industry. And we're kind of crazy that we love it, but being able to talk to people who get it, who understand it. I mean, you could be talking to your sister or mom or whatever, and they just kind of shake their head and, oh yeah, why do you like that? Or like, just wonder what we're doing. And because no one really knows if they're not really in the industry, is my opinion. And they're just gonna, kind of tell you what you need to hear, or they know you as a person. And sometimes that's not good enough. You really need someone to be like, hey, you're really on the right path here, or hey, I would try this, or contact this. And they might have a contact where it's like, hey, call this PM and they'll help you at whatever company. So you can get a little bit of everything from different types of mentors. But I would say, I mean, to me, it's an absolute must if you want to succeed in life and in a career.
I was gonna ask on that mentor thing. You were lucky that you found, you had the female superintendent mentor. What about like finding some? Because some people they didn't have that opportunity. I would say, like, I had at least my mom as a mentor within some form of the industry, and then I did luckily found like some people while I was working. But like that, I think that's the hardest part, is like, well, who do I go to mentor? Who do I go to talk to? I don't know. Like, what? So I go, hi, do you want to be my mentor? Like, how would you go about that?
I think it's kind of just building the relationships, like as a friend with them. And kind of, I always have questions in the back of my head to ask people of, it's a little different now that I have mentors, and now I'm kind of starting to become a mentor for other people. But like, hey, what's the best part of your career? Or like, what do you like about construction? And just kind of getting those intro questions in and seeing if you kind of jive with any of those. And I always thought it was weird at first, like when I first got into the industry, of being like, hey, do you want to grab lunch? Because I'm like, do people do that? But they don't care. Like, they're like, oh yeah, sure. Like, even grabbing coffee, or just, hey, can we go take a walk on the field and like look at a few things? And I think that starts to kind of open it up. And I feel like we have so many great people in the industry that they can see that side of it and kind of push you to, ask what you're looking for. Especially if you're younger entering the industry. But if you're newer and coming into the industry after, another career, kind of same capacity, just getting to know somebody, seeing if you jive as, a friend, or asking about how they're buying a house or what they do on the weekends, and start having those conversations and being like, hey, do you mind if you can, you can ask that, like, do you mind being my mentorship, once you kind of get that relationship. But I think just having them kind of be there, of just like support. And then it also goes back though to, it's kind of both ways, right? In every relationship, of saying what you need and what you're looking for, and then seeing if they can reciprocate that, and if they have the availability. Because sometimes people are super busy on a project and it's just like not the right season. But they could be like, yeah, you could call me anytime. So maybe they don't have time to sit down and walk with you or teach you things. But at least you have that backup if anything goes wrong in your job.
Say, I have asked somebody. I have asked, like, totally. I respect you. I would like you to be my mentor. Do you like, here's things I want to work on, and I've gotten a positive response. So I'm not saying as like I've done it both ways, where someone organically has become my mentor, and then I've asked someone specifically to do it. So I definitely think both ways work.
I think
you have to be comfortable.
Absolutely. I think especially if you're coming out of college or like internship, it might be like a little, I don't know. But I mean, telling someone that you look up to them, I don't know about you ladies, but that just feels so good. Like,
I'd agree.
hell yeah. Like, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
be your
Yeah.
mentor or teach you whatever you want to know. It's like, wow, I've made it to that position. And it just feels good to give back in that way, you know?
Yeah.
Agree. Yeah.
I would have to say that I think that's more common with superintendents than it is for the office in my
That's fair.
perspective, only
see that.
because Tyler, my husband, if any of his mentors, who they probably know who they are listening to this, he's got like, you know, solid mentors in his circle, right? Like, and it's usually superintendents that are above him that he's kind of, you know, like they're training him to be their
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel like as a project manager, it's a little more difficult to have a mentor because it's easier to be mentor because you have project engineers and, you know, those kind of relationships. But it's a little more difficult because you don't have as much of like the people above you that are in, you know, the higher roles, or there's usually fewer of them, right? So like it's harder to create that mentorship or create that relationship because they're usually your boss and they're also everyone else's boss. So it's like it's just a little more difficult. So I mean I like your thought of like when you said earlier, like, you know, from a different company, even like it doesn't have to be someone in your company. It could be someone just in the industry that you respect.
Yep.
And, you know, that you want to start hanging out with, that you want to grab lunch with. It doesn't have to be someone, you know, in the same even like realm. It could be, you know, my mentor could be an architect or right, like that kind of a mindset, I think, shift in it not being just someone who's in a role that you want above you.
Right. And I mean, they have connections too. And so they like, you gotta meet her. Like, she's awesome. I think she would be, you know, a great advocate for you. Because that's also the importance of a mentorship too, is advocating, whether it be promotions or trainings or, you know, whatever it could possibly be, to have someone sit at that table for you and say, yeah, Jenna's ready for this, or hey, we need to support Jenna here. Because you can't be in every meeting and you're not in every room where your name is said. And so to have kind of that group around you who truly supports you is, I mean, huge, no matter where you are in your career.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah, that was, I mean, this has been such a good conversation. I knew it would be too. I'm like so pumped. I'm so pumped because I was like, the minute that we like thought of, I mean, I think you were on our list from before we even recorded our first episode, actually.
It's an honor.
I was like, this badass female superintendent, you know,
I do have to say my nickname is Badass Bitch, Triple B.
Hell yeah.
Or Bad
Like
Bitch
that.
Beth is the Triple B. So
Okay.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, of course.